What's going on, tribe? How y'all feeling? I want you to think about what I'm about to talk to you about. And think about it real carefully, real deeply. Ask yourself this question
Jammy on a beat, boy.
and do your own independent research. In the Old Testament, who did all the killing and punishments in the Old Testament of the original 5 books? Think about it. Scratch your head a little bit and think about who punished the people in the Bible or Torah.
Israelites arrived in the Promised Land. They are commanded to annihilate the Hittites, the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, who already lived there, to avoid being tempted into idolatry. And in Deuteronomy 20, verse 16 and 17 reads, "From the cities of these peoples which Yahweh your God is giving you as an inheritance, do not let anything that breathes remain alive. You shall surely annihilate." I'm sure you mean annihilate them.
It's no secret that the God of the Bible has a darker side. Throughout the Old Testament, God is responsible for a whole slew of natural disasters, from erasing life on earth in a world-ending flood to unleashing devastating plagues of biblical proportions. Like it or not, God has a death toll. Question is, has anyone gone through the Bible and counted it, armed with a calculator, a spreadsheet, and a King James version? I have done just that. I want to figure out how many people in the Bible can list God as a cause of death. Turns out, there is a precise number, and it's in the millions. It's a horrifying statistic, especially compared with Satan, who has a measly 10. But what does this mean? What's the explanation behind this figure? All this and more as we unravel God's biblical kill count. Our search begins in the Old Testament, the section of the Bible that covers the history of Israel. Within these pages, you're never too far away from a biblical disaster, like when God engulfs an entire city in flames. This violent depiction of God has always fascinated me. It's so different to the peaceful God of the New Testament. I want to find an explanation for this behavior, one that's rooted in the history of this book. But to know what we're dealing with, we need some numbers. How many people does God actually kill in the Bible?
Listen.
So I opened up a copy and began counting. It felt like going through a celebrity's Twitter feed and finding some unsavory things from the past. But instead of old tweets, it was the Old Testament. Here are some examples of what I found. "And fire came out from the Lord and consumed 250 men. Then the Lord sent poisonous serpents among the people, and they bit the people, so that many Israelites died. At midnight the Lord struck down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt." I collected them into a single spreadsheet. This vast document records God's biblical death count. Each entry has a brief description and a corresponding biblical verse. I'm not the first to attempt this, by the way. I've relied at times on the work of Steve Wells, an author whose book and website contain a meticulously thorough list. In the Bible, deaths caused by God fall into 2 categories, one with exact numbers and one without numbers at all. I'll start my search in the parts where the Bible gives precise figures. Some of these biblical outbursts incur a very high death toll indeed, like when 50,070 men are pulverized for glimpsing inside the Ark of the Covenant. But that's nothing compared to the time when God sends an angel to wipe out 185,000 soldiers in one night. It's nice to see a Bible-accurate angel in this natural habitat. Other incidents are plain strange. In one story, Bible attributes to God, you arrive at 2,559,449. 2.5 million. Compare that with the
Y'all be sure that y'all follow God's biblical kill count explained. Follow that link, subscribe, check it out for yourself. Now let's get back to what I was talking about.
Ask yourself, where and when was this devil thing implemented in the Bible? Because in the Old Testament, Yahweh, the Most High, the Supreme Being,
Jammy on the
punished,
beat, boy.
killed, sanctioned, permitted, allowed. You might heard about Yahweh asking Satan where thou came from. You might have heard about the collaboration of allowing a so-called Satan to punish Job. But why wasn't there Satan that was needed to bring about punishment back in the Old Testament? Where was your Satan or devil then? Because from the incest, from the fornication, from killings and all these things that the divine permitted in the Old Testament of 5 books, where was there a demon devil mentioned amongst the apostles? Back in the Old Testament. So you mean to tell me that the divine, the supreme being, identified in having the duality of light and dark, but it's not light and dark, it just is. That's why it is not mentioned in the Old Testament.
Satan, or the devil, was one of the best known characters in the Western traditions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Surprisingly, this entity was a late corner in the ancient world. Satan, as a totally evil being, is nowhere to be found in the Jewish Bible. He evolved during the height of the Persians.
Of Yahweh being, having, I should say, a entity to carry out evil, to punish his chosen people. Think about it. So, where did this Satan thing come from? Because clearly there is a good and evil all in one that's not even acknowledged as being good and evil. It just is. You touch the ark the wrong way, you gonna die. You break these commandments, you gonna die. They will not adhere to or do what's said, you're gonna be 86. Let's not use the word die. Let's say you're gonna be neutralized. Listen to what I'm saying, because this is very important. Because you have to understand that we being created by the creators, there is a different beings created, more malevolent, more powerful, more the divine than just the one in which we know as being Yahweh. Yahweh being a separate Lord of the land or divine source that has sovereign, has control and dominion over groups of people, just like a king will. You understand why it acknowledged that a lot of ones say the tribe of Judah being a lion. A lion don't need permission. A lion does what a lion do because a lion is the king of the beasts. There's no laws for animals. This Satan came into play for a job. Ain't no Job. When you put an E on J-O-B, E, the O makes his name and it say Job. So when did this job became a Job? No, we talking about a job. Understand, we talking about a work that we all have to do. And this work is connecting with life, purpose, and experiences that we all experience. That you have a force inside you that is of light, as you call it, that is of righteousness, of discernment. We talking about free will. So it would be futile for one to think that a supreme righteous God would allow evil to be in its glorious continents. Ain't nowhere in the world can dirt exist in bleach being pure. Real Clorox bleach being pure. It's impossible. So how can, unless that bleach is already tainted, stained, that allow something of pure evil to coexist around it and to communicate with a divine source? You got to think. You have to really think deep inside that when it says in the testament of the Torah regarding the tree of knowledge, when you devour anything, you could devour information, knowledge, art. You could devour anything. When you consume anything, you devour it. When it says that they ate, do not eat from the tree of knowledge, and this devil, as y'all want to call it, serpent, let's say serpent, it's a big difference. The serpent simply posed the question that you will not die. Did the serpent lie? Surely if you eat from the fruit, the tree of knowledge, you shall surely die. That's a commandment. Thou shalt not eat, pretty much. You don't eat from that fruit. Do not eat. That's a commandment. They ate from it. They didn't die. So, my understanding that what was given was knowledge. The serpent is the same serpent that's being used in the Kundalini energy. Research Kundalini. The same serpent that's being used, the Arrayas. The same serpent that's being used in paramedics. The same serpent that was said shall crawl on his belly and shall eat dust for the rest of his life. But even that wasn't a true statement. Because snakes eat more than dust. So what's actually being said? And why is it that a divine source can say one thing to find out that it's another thing, that what the divine source says is not always actual? Because in the long run, anything of too much would eventually fade away. And switching and not understanding not switching up, but mankind not really comprehending and understanding the deeper, simplistic, spiritual, in-depth meaning of things. Knowledge of the tree of knowledge. The tree of knowledge. Understand something. People always say apple, but it never said what fruit it was. Understand that. It's a big difference. When you consume anything, too much of anything can kill you though. There's a greater mystery that's been shredded and hidden in the Old Testament. And it's for you to understand, because mankind been conditioned to miss it here in the West. You taught religion. You taught a certain divine source is to be worshipped, edified, deified, praised, and give charity to. Whatever it is. Be it the Holy Mother Mary, Jesus, St. John, Saint whatever, Jehovah's Witness. No slight, no slander, just saying that's what you believe in. But understand something. These things were taught to us, fed to us, and we regurgitate what was given to us. How many times have we allowed to look outside what we was taught? You see? This is why it's stated in certain texts to seek knowledge all the way to China. In Islam it says that. You know what I mean? And it's imperative and important that you comprehend, that you have to understand something. We all represent a tree. And if it is a forbidden fruit, understand, just as it was in the old days, which is the old text, before everything became broken down and watered down, the divine source. Y'all say that a lot of y'all believe everything dealing with Saul of Tarsus, Paul came, and y'all accept the New Testament. So y'all believe, many of y'all believe that it's okay to eat pork, swine, that you don't have to pray and seek blessing from a divine source. It's okay. Try doing that with poison. Try doing that with small drops of poison. Let's say it was poison in food, you know it, small amounts, and you say it's okay, it's okay for us to eat it, we pray if it's good. What's happening now? People still pray over their food, and what's still happening to them? There's diseases, health issues that happen to people all around the world. You can't pray over nothing and expect that it's going to be clean and pure when you know wrong is wrong and right is right. Ain't no sanctioning justifying the wrong when you know that you walk on glass, you gonna cut your feet unless you train. You understand? It's a deeper mystery behind this, because the veils have to be dropped. A forbidden fruit was a forbidden fruit, right? That anytime that you eat from the tree thereof, we represent trees. Because just like a tree, men, we release our seed into the earth of a woman. What happened when that seed entered into fertile earth? That seed, that egg start to grow. That serpent snake start to grow. You see? Stop being taught by other people and start learning to teach yourself. Learn what's right and just for you. Because a fruit is what we are. If we talk about the text, because it states in the text, the book, the Bible, y'all want to call it, whichever is best for you, to be fruitful. Forbidden fruit. To be fruitful and multiply. Listen. If a forbidden fruit, and that fruit is to be considered negative because one have consumed that fruit, why is it the word is used to be fruitful and multiply? Is that saying to be negative and multiply that which is negative? You see, this is why you have to understand that there's a deeper meaning to things. You have the ability to free will. Anytime that you open your energy and your psyche up, those doors open up to a entity that you classify it by a name. That becomes real in your mind's eye, that you start to center. You start to focus and arrow power and energy into that which was created to give life to that which is considered to be evil. Because there was no such thing in the Old Testament where Lot, where Adam, where Jacob, Joseph, Benjamin, Joseph, Jacob, Benjamin, Isaac. Hey, come on, I can name them. Look, Solomon, David. Where did they say or is being mentioned about a devil or Satan being mentioned? In the Old Testament. Jesus said, I came not to change the law, but to confirm it. So if the law's not changed, nothing has changed from the old, why is it that the new changed? Why is it that now all of a sudden there's a Satan to create a religion and an institution predicated on a evil? But that entity was a part of existence in the Torah, in the Hebrew back then, because there was no such thing that was identified in the Torah other than mentioning from whence I came. It's a deeper meaning if you understand Enki, Enlil, and Anu. If you know, you know. Do your own independent research. But you have to have mastery and control over your dark and your light. You see? The understanding that when Adam and Eve being pure, being white, let's use that. Let's say Adam and Eve being green. When Adam and Eve bit of the fruit, they became green and dark, which creates your earth that you call it, vegetation, which create that life form, that which was needed to help them to see. Understand that a divine source, one that is omnipresent, omnipotent, have the ability and the foresight to know what's going to happen before it happened. Do you think that the divine source created and had no knowledge of what it is that his creation was doing or was going to do? That means that this divine source is not, as in the Old Testament, not as powerful as we would like to believe. Because this divine source could not see that this was going to end up happening. They were going to sin. Now ask yourself, Did Yahweh know or have the knowledge to predict what was going to happen in the future? Because if Yahweh knew, Yahweh wouldn't have been as strict as Yahweh was. You see, it's a deeper mystery in that. Everything happened by divine source and divine ordinance. You see, parents of higher learning, of enlightenment, of fortitude, who can see a little bit further, know it's important to allow our kids to walk on their own. We know it's important for our kids to go through hardships at times to be able to learn. It's meant for them to argue, to allow them to be able to work things out. Like right now, many of us have the free will to pull your gun out and shoot. You, just as the Old Testament, just as God did, many of y'all have the ability to decide to help that blind person cross the street. This is an institution of learning. This is an institution of learning. So use your learning wisely and not be so caught up on indoctrination. But understand that in order for the earth to grow, the dark matter within oneself, darkness cannot be darkness except by dark needing green to be able to make life. Green is needed in order for earth to procreate. You gotta understand the polarity of both. I don't want you thinking or suggesting to you to do evil. That is not who I am. That is not what my purpose is. I'm not saying to volunteer to go out and do evil because you're good. I'm saying if you make a mistake and you decide to do something that go against your conscience, it's okay. Understand it, comprehend it. You understand? The purpose of religion is to set laws and boundaries to govern mankind. Just as animals in the animal kingdom has no laws that govern them, an intelligent man has intelligence. An animal only have instincts, does not make one in tune with the intellect, the divine that's within. So, can one live a civilized life without a creator? We know from history that every tribe had a divine source and things that they believed and they stood on, they lived by. The same thing applies. There is beings from different planets and their vicegerents, their pharaohs, in whom they give forth information to educate. Know a little bit more about the Ancient of Days, the divine source, these beings, extraterrestrial beings, alien beings that y'all want to call them, who happen to be the gods that's mentioned in the Bible. The Elohim is a group of divine, powerful lords came together, which brought forth a unification, a UN, if you will. The Elohims. Yahweh is one supreme being. So tap into whatever that's best for you, whatever works best for you. I'm just here to acknowledge for you to understand that for those of higher Gnostics, Sufism, or tap into a supreme way of knowledge, a supreme information. In order for you to tap into the supreme, to understand the light, you got to go through the dark. To comprehend the dark, you got to murky yourself with the milk being poured into the dirt of the earth. You see? The same thing that happened
Jammy on the beat,
when
boy.
procreation happens. You see? Procreation happens by the semen, the milk being dropped into the dark earth to create life. Consume knowledge like the apple. Consume knowledge, process it, devour it, and ask the ancient ones to guide you and help you to see things more clearly. 1.